I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know there's probably a few people still filtering in, but I know everyone has busy schedules, so I want to be conscious of that. Thank you all for joining us today. This is a webinar hosted by Fostering Families Today magazine, of which I am the editor and have been in that role for over 20 years, where we focus on educating foster, adoptive, and kinship families on issues related to the children in their homes. Today, we'll be talking about the parent perspective, what foster caregivers need to know about family separation. And we're joined by several individuals whose children were involved in the child welfare system. So we're so honored to have them here and to share their experiences with us. So next slide, please. As I said earlier, Fostering Families Today is a 20-plus-year-old bi-monthly award-winning magazine dedicated to foster, kinship, and adoptive caregivers and their agencies around the country. You can find us on several platforms, Facebook, Instagram. We hope that you will join our conversations in all of those places. We also have a couple of Facebook groups that are specific to kinship. It's the Kinship Toolbox and the Foster Parenting Toolbox. So you can join those larger conversations on there as well. Next slide, please. So today we're going to introduce you to our panelists. First of all, we have Jeremiah Danier, who is my most recent columnist in Fostering Families Today, and I'm so honored to have his voice shared in here, and he's sharing the voices and stories of many others. The column is called From the Family, and he focuses on the experiences of families whose children become involved in the foster care system. So, and many of them are joining us today. And so I will just kind of give you guys all a little bit of a bio from them. Jeremiah lives on Whidbey Island with his wife and 2 daughters. He serves as a family consultant and thought leader, advocating for partnerships to keep children safe, strengthen families, and create supportive communities. He draws upon personal experience and training in behavioral health, protective factors, generational poverty, and responsible fathering. In 2005, he became involved with child welfare due to abuse allegations. As a young father, he was afraid, angry, and reliving his own adverse childhood experiences. Training in parent-child attachment, co-parenting, and counseling helped him overcome past trauma and develop better parenting skills. After his family reunified in 2007, he began working on building parent partnerships through the Washington State Parent Ally Committee. He also advocated for the passage of several state laws to reduce barriers for families facing adversity. In 2013, Jeremiah began helping expand parent partnerships after joining the Birth Parent National Network. In 2015, he started consulting with the Children's Bureau Center for States Project. And in 2017, he helped form the National Birth and Foster Parent Partnership. So thanks, Jeremiah. He's going to lead our panelists in discussion here in a little bit. Our first panelist is Brigea Colthurst. She is a mother of 3 sons and grandmother of 1. She first became involved with the child welfare system in 2008 when she lost custody of her son due to substance abuse issues. When she entered inpatient treatment and is now 13 years sober and actively involved in the lifelong process of recovery. She spent 8 years as a parent advocate for a better way, working with families involved with the child welfare system in Alameda County before becoming the lead parent advocate of Alameda County's parent engagement program. Today, Bree is the founding senior parent advocate for the East Bay Family Defenders. She's leading the development of the parent advocate component of their interdisciplinary family defense model. Her work with Alameda County's Family Treatment Court allows her the opportunity to support, engage, and encourage families who are in recovery and working to reunify with their children. Bree has participated in a number of multidisciplinary teams across Alameda County, one of which is the Casey Families MDT program. She was a member of the Crossover Youth Practice Module Committee, bringing the parent voice to the table to improve services for youth in both the child welfare and juvenile justice systems, as well as one of the founding members on the Race Equity Committee at DCFS. She received the Board of Directors Employee of the Year Award in 2014, and also the 2020 Casey Excellence for Children's Awards. So thanks for joining us today. Kimberly Mays is a licensed foster parent who has turned her personal experience in the criminal justice and child welfare systems into a passionate mission to improve policies and practices that impact children and families. She is currently a contracted social services worker with the Washington State Office of Public Defense Parents Representation Program. Prior to that, she was responsible for leading the King County Superior Court's Parents for Parents program for 5 years. She has served on dozens of local, state, and national committees and work groups for more than 15 years, focusing on policies related to child welfare, mental health, substance abuse treatment, corrections, and reentry systems. She serves as a contracted consultant with Casey Family Programs, Strategic Innovatives Teams, and the Birth Parent Advisory Committee, and is also a birth parent formerly involved in child welfare. Kimberly earned a Bachelor of Arts and a Master's in Public Administration from Evergreen State College. Thank you, Kimberly, for joining us today as well. Edwin Day served prison time when he was young due to gang involvement and substance abuse issues. At the time of his release, he learned that he had a newborn son who was born addicted to drugs. He was also told by a caseworker that there was not enough time left for him to regain his custody of his son. While his son was in foster care for the next 8 months, Edwin worked 2 jobs and took full responsibility for completing a case plan, which included participation in substance abuse treatment services, Narcotics Anonymous meetings, counseling, court hearings, parenting classes, and regular visitations, which he never missed. Edwin was successful in turning his life around and gaining full custody of his son, Patron. He has been clean and sober for 13 years. In addition to his son, Edwin and his girlfriend later adopted his niece and nephew. Today, the couple is caring for 8 children ranging in age from 2 to 16. They became licensed foster adoptive parents in order to provide a stable home for the new children becoming part of their family. He works as a parent partner with Iowa Department of Human Services. He is trained as a facilitator on the 24/7 DAD program and provides training on this curriculum to dads at Newton Correctional Facility. He also facilitates a support group for dads and focuses on helping them prepare for their court hearings. In addition to his responsibilities as a father and his multiple jobs, Edwin opened a single father custody program known as Patron's Hands to help dads regain custody of their children. Edwin is also a member of IDHS's African American Review Team that works to prevent removal of African American children from their families. Edwin received the 2020 Casey Excellence for Children's Award. And finally, we have Shawna King. She is a Native American single parent who is a citizen of North Dakota's Fort Berthold Reservation, living in Maple Grove, Minnesota. She gave birth to 5 children. Her 2 oldest sons were raised by their father, and her 4th child, a daughter, was placed in an adoptive home. She's been raising her 2 youngest children, a daughter and a teenage son who has cerebral palsy and requires 24-hour nursing care. Shawna grew up in a North Dakota tribal community with her parents, but was placed in foster care at age 14, where she remained until she was 18. She understands now that the lack of emotional connection from her mother is a pattern familiar to many American Indian families who experience historical trauma. As a parent, Shawna became involved with the child welfare system because of opiate abuse, and her 2 youngest children were placed in foster care. During incarceration, she began to relook at her life. She entered inpatient treatment, and over the next 2 years, she was successful in overcoming her drug addiction and completing her case plan. In 2011, she reunited with her 2 children. She attributes her strong connections to her tribal community and the wisdom from her elders in helping her. Today, she's been clean and sober for 11 years. Shawna currently works as a parent mentor and a community outreach advocate with the Indian Child Welfare Act Law Center in Minneapolis, and she provides support to American Indian families affected by the child welfare system. She helped to create the organization's parent mentor program. Today, Shawna is actively involved in her community as a board member for the American Indian Family Center in St. Paul, a Minnesota One Stop for Families, and is a member of Children's Hospital Native American Advisory Committee for the Native American Liaison and other ICWA related events. She also is a member of Families as Partners program for Children's Hospital that mentors families with children with special needs. She is the recipient of the 2016 Casey Excellence for Children Award and the Unsung Hero Award of 2018. So I know those bios are lengthy, but these guys are rock stars at what they do. They have taken their experiences and poured so much good into the world. So I'm super honored to have them. Before I turn it over to Jeremiah, I just want to say you guys can drop your questions in the chat at any time, and we will get to those at the end. So Jeremiah, take it away. Jeremiah, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry.
You're okay.
The first question is, we're going to ask our panelists is, can you briefly share some of your CPS experience and the outcome of your case?
Okay, I go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Mays. I live in Washington State, and I'm a mother who lost my parental rights to 9 beautiful children in 4 separate dependency cases. 4 of my children are lost in my first dependency, 3 in my second dependency, and then 1 child in my third and 1 in my fourth. By the time I got to that stage, go around, please, go around. By the time I got to that stage of the process, those last two, I just didn't even fight, because I thought when child welfare came in your life, it was a automatic termination. So for years, I suffered from untreated co-occurring mental health and substance use disorder, which greatly contributed to my unsuccessful attempts to reunite with my children. I would get referred to inpatient treatment, but back then, treatment centers only addressed the substance use and not the mental health. So I kept getting out and relapsing because I couldn't get anyone to address both back then. So during my 10th pregnancy, when I found out I was pregnant with my 10th child, I prayed because I was scared, and I prayed and I turned my will and my life over to God, because I did not want to lose another child. But I didn't have any hope or faith in myself or the system because of all my past failures. Within a week after I prayed, I was blessed to be assigned to a birth to 3 caseworker named Roxanne Brown, who was also a licensed mental health professional. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself at that time, and she went above and beyond her job duties to become my only positive community support at that time. She hand-walked me through the process of accessing and engaging in the services I needed, and I was finally able to get the co-occurring disorder treatment that I desperately needed, and which gave me a foundation to begin rebuilding my life. I joined an amazing local church and enrolled in college. And for the first time in my adult life, I was clean and sober. My daughter was born clean, and I had hope for my future. However, when my daughter was 3 months old and I was breastfeeding, I called my local child welfare agency to ask for daycare assistance so I could start college in 3 months, but get a job before then and buy a car, so I'll be prepared. My name was raised in a flag system because of my past history, and 2 child protective workers came to my home to assess my daughter's safety. After I showed the workers all my documentation of all my accomplishments, they congratulated me and told me to find a daycare and the department would pay for it. Unfortunately, a few of my former CPS workers were supervisors at that time and forced these 2 workers to file a petition to remove my child. The 2 workers came to my home the next day in tears with the police. I can still see that day in my mind. It was 10:30 a.m. and I was sitting on the couch breastfeeding my child. My daughter, and I was happy as all get out, and I had great plans for my future. Watching them walk away out my front door with my child was more traumatic for me than any of my past removals. In my past removals, I had some issues that needed mitigating and addressing. And even though treatment, not removal, was the best resource for me and my family at that time, that didn't happen. But this time I was sound, healthy, living right and doing right. So I thought, surely when I get to court in 3 days, the judge will give my baby back immediately after I show the documentation of all I accomplished. 7 months of sobriety, clean, stable housing, multiple services, responsible, nurturing, protective mother. To my great disappointment, the court kept my child in foster care based solely on my past history and no imminent safety concerns. I was devastated, but I was able to persevere because I had developed an amazing community support network, including my new church family and Roxanne. And they rallied around me and encouraged me and supported me to keep moving forward. I started college 3 months after my daughter was taken from me. And I continued in the service that I had set up for myself, made all my visits with my child, and received straight A's with honors in college. The beautiful thing that came out of all this tragedy was that I had really impressed the dependency judge and the stakeholders. So at my dismissal hearing, they had a recess, had a brief party celebration for my success, and asked me to help start the first Parents for Parents program in Washington State. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. Bree or Edwin or Shawna?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Edwin Day. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. And it's a blessing to be here amongst my great colleagues. Their experiences have helped me, molded me into being a better person, not taking no for an answer. I just want to say that my experience with the child welfare system wasn't a very good one to start, because my son's mother was the main focus in the process. The child was born by her, so the child was removed from her. So the plan was to give my son back to mom once she, got through the program and figured out what she wanted to do. Unfortunately, 4 months into it, my son's mother decided not to come to court and not drop clean UAs. She made a decision that she wanted to give custody of my son to her sister, and not thinking about me, but just making sure that my son stayed with her family through this process. And I was like, well, no, I'm here. When you got a child that's tested positive for crack cocaine, that's big enough that you can hold in your hand, it's a scary situation. Being a father, I didn't know what I was going to do with this little boy that's in the hospital. But I knew I had to do something. And it started with me. I had to find myself. I had to find what I wanted to do with my life in order to make sure that my son's life was a safe and healthy one. So I'm going to say my experience wasn't the best, but the experience I went through made me a stronger person today. When you're told that there's not enough time left for you to get your son when he's a baby and he's not even walking, he's not even talking, was a big trauma experience for myself. There have been times where I wanted to give up and go back to using because that's the way my worker looked at me, as just another drug addict trying to be a parent. So I had to prove not only to myself but to others that wasn't me. I wouldn't want anything that's happened to me through the course of getting my son. I needed that, I needed someone to tell me that I wasn't nothing. I needed someone to tell me that I wasn't a very good dad, to motivate me, to build me up, to show people and show the world that that is not me. And I am a good father and I can take care of my child. Just give me the opportunity. But most of everything was focused on mom. Like I said, once mom decided not to continue on, I got the services that mom was getting in the beginning, which I feel I should have got then. That way I wouldn't have been behind. It wouldn't have took so long for me to get my son home. But everything happens for a reason. All that trauma, all that experience happened for a reason. I'm glad it happened because it made me who I am today. I am a father now of 8, and they told me there wasn't enough time left for my first one, but now there's time, and there's 8 of them in our home now. So it's a blessing. I'm thankful for the process. A lot of people don't stay strong through that process when they're always told that something's not right with what they're doing. The good thing is, I had a judge and I had a county attorney. And I don't really speak highly on judges and county attorneys because I've been in front of them. It's always been, you're going to jail or you're going to prison. But this time I had an opportunity to connect with my judge and my county attorney. And they told me, keep doing the good work, keep doing what you're doing, and things are going to work out. And things did work out. And till this day, I still have a direct line to my judge who gave me my son. I still got a direct line to the judge that I adopted my niece and nephew through. I can just push one button on my phone and there's my judge, and she answers on the first pickup. So, I mean, the experience wasn't all that bad in the end. It turned out just the way I wanted it to turn out. And I'm thankful for that.
Thank you, Edwin. Shawna?
Thank you, Jeremiah. So, I just have to say that I work with Virgia, Jeremiah, Edwin, and Kimberly, and every time I hear their stories, well, you know what? I don't get to hear their stories often because we're always, 2 steps ahead doing something else, making changes and making moves, and we are paving a way for our grandchildren's children. And I appreciate that about the work that we do. So going back to where we come from in the beginning and the roots is tough and hard. And so I'm a Native American mother of 5 children. Like was talked about, I raised 2. I raised all of them except for the daughter I gave up for adoption, and until they were toddlers. I also grew up in foster care. And my story starts prior to me. My story starts with my mom and her being adopted out and having to be returned to her mother, and starts with my grandmother who had her dad commit suicide in the house that my mom grew up in because of boarding schools. So my story is very intergenerational and very historical. And I don't doubt it's not like that for most brown and Black people. It's not just what we're talking about right here in our own stories today, but this has happened before and it's repeated. And until we can change the system, we're going to continue to have us on panels like this. So my involvement with CPS started when I was 14. I did not have ICWA involved. I did not, as soon as I was removed from the home, I had no visitation with my sisters, no visitation with my mom. And it was like my family's rights were terminated. So then I grew up as a broken adult, trying to survive and having kids at a very, very early age. And dealing with a lot of abusive people because I grew up in a very abusive home. I slept in parks at the age of 3rd grade. I was very homeless. And so I never got to heal from that trauma. And then I became up as a broken adult and had kids at a very early age, looking for love in all the wrong places, like that song says. And that led to nothing because I wasn't I was a broken person. And so at 33, I developed an addiction to heroin. And I have to say, I grew up with a lot of trauma and a lot of anxiety and a lot of things. And I remember having a person that I dated at 33 years old, 32, and he took pills. And it wasn't until I actually took my first thing of heroin that every single thing inside of me went away. I didn't feel anxiety, I didn't feel pain, and I didn't feel hurt. And that was something that I never felt in my entire life, was a false healing, right? It was a false sense of security that I never had in my entire life. And at this time, I was homeless with an addict boyfriend and a disabled child. So at 33, I developed an addiction to heroin that was able to give me a false sense of security from my unresolved trauma. And I ended up in jail. I ended up overdosing in a public park with my disabled child who was quadriplegic and nonverbal, and going to jail for the first time. And I remember being in jail thinking, okay, I didn't know where my kids were. Nobody let me know where they were. I had so much drugs on me that I had up to 12 felonies, so I was being investigated by detectives, but nobody wanted to tell me about where my kids were or what they were doing. And how's my son? Who knew how to take care of him? I knew his cares, but what was going on? So it was like scary, frustrating. And then also there was a sense of like, okay, well, now I can work on me. Now I can figure out myself. Now I can go to treatment. Now I can do these things. In the back of my mind, though, I was always like, as soon as I get out of here, I'm getting on methadone and I'm going to be doing my own thing, you know. But, you know, child protection wasn't a good space for me to actually heal, but it was a good, like, okay, this, you're not doing what you should be doing. And so I went through a system that didn't support me as a mom, didn't support me, especially as a birth mom, support me as a daughter, support me as an addict, support me as anything. I was just somebody that they needed to get through whatever I did and just close my case. And I was probably a very, considering I work in the system now, I did everything they wanted me to do on time and everything. And still the system didn't support me because my case was so egregious with having a son that was disabled and I overdosed in a public park. So they treated me like the worst person ever. I had a social worker that didn't want me to have my kids back, wouldn't say that she was going to reunify my kids with me. And the one space that did hold me up as a mother to the children I birthed and as an actual human was my Native American community. And they called together meetings and said, hey, this is what's happening. Mom has done this. So if you want her to do more, you need to do this. And if I didn't have my Native American community, I would not have my kids back today because I did everything that they asked me to. So now, prior to getting my kids back, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? How am I going to get housing? How am I going to feed them? How am I going to do all these things? I'm like, figure it out, figure it on your own. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to be a massage therapist and I'm going to work for the Twins or the Vikings, or I'm going to be on a cruise ship. I'm going to do something, you know. But as soon as my case was coming close to closing, I realized how much the state didn't want to reunify me with my children as much as my community did. And that's when I entered into college to do something about it, to be able to be a part of the system so no other parent had to feel like I did, because I was treated like I was an old used piece of trash that wasn't worth saving, that wasn't worth anything. And even if the system looked at me like that, eventually my kids wouldn't look at me like that. Even if they talked about me like that and they had my kids feeling that way, eventually they're going to come back and they're going to find me and they're going to know that I'm a mom who actually truly loved them. But I was dealing with historical and generational trauma, and that I had my own personal issues and I really was working hard on fixing. And even if I fixed myself, I still was looked at as a piece of trash. So I didn't ever want any other mom or dad to feel that way. So I went to college to try and change that to, I don't know if I was going to be a social worker or an attorney. I had no idea. My first thing was human services. And prior to that, I had to take a class in college, and I had to volunteer for 15 hours and then write my final on where I volunteered. And I chose the law center that represented me. And I can tell you, I didn't have a good relationship with them because they sent me 4 or 5 different attorneys at the time. And from there, I became on the board. And then I talked to the executive director, who is now my boss. And we discussed like what it was like for me to go through a system, to have people who didn't know who I was, who showed up at court, didn't even ask me anything, just showed up at court and represented me. And I had like 3 or 4 different people who did that. And that's now changed. And I was able to be a part of starting a peer-to-peer representation at this law center. And for me, it's meaningful because I didn't realize a lot about myself until I went to college. And I didn't realize about my historical and generational trauma until I went to college. And that stuff means a lot to me because you know what? It wasn't that my mom didn't love me. It was that my mom didn't know how to be a mom because her mom didn't know how to be a mom because her mom was in a boarding school. And her stepdad committed suicide, or her grandpa committed suicide because of boarding schools. And how that trickled down to me, I'm a direct result of what the government did to my people. And I want to uplift that in everything that I do. And I want us to help heal from that. And that's really, truly what drives me as a mom. So thank you.
And can we hear a little bit from Bree?
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm trying to stop this car. Hold on, you guys.
Bree, we were just gonna have you share quickly about your CPS experience and the outcome of your case.
Gotcha. So my case started, I appreciate you all for showing up today to hear us. My case started in 2008. My son was born positive tox. I was 43, first time coming into the system, didn't know, I heard about CPS, but my family never went through it. I'm the youngest out of 5. Fathers from Jamaica, went to med school, mothers from the South, went to law school. So education was the key in our household. Everybody went to college. I got married, had kids, had 2 older sons, but I never worked on my trauma. My trauma was being molested as a child. So got a divorce, hit rock bottom, started using crack cocaine. 2008, July 17th, on my birthday, I had a son, Love. I have a son, Love, who was born positive. Fast forward, the agency got involved. I woke up, I had this lady, emergency worker, holding my baby. And, you know, me coming out of my addiction, I instantly, like, I said some words like, you know, who are you holding my child? Put my baby down. And she didn't explain her role clearly of why she was there, you know. So my son, she told me about a meeting I was supposed to be having, a CFT meeting. It was team decision meetings back then. I go into the meeting, I have all my information history on the board. They find out I'm epileptic. They don't talk about me raising my other 2 kids. They just talk about, you know what, she won't be able to raise this. She won't be able to raise this son. And very educated, hearing me. I'm telling him I did my homework here. I've got a program. I'm going to a program. As soon as I see him in this meeting, my new worker looks at me, a brother, meaning African American, and he says, yeah, right. What if I had a t-shirt that wore that? What if I wasn't determined? What if I didn't have the education in me? What if I knew my rights? So after the meeting, I went straight home, packed, and went into a program. I did a year in program. Mind you, that first month, what they said wouldn't be done, I was reunified with my son in that residential program. His name is Love. I reunified with Love. My mom died. Ooh, I say this story all the time. My mom passed when I was 6 months in a program. I was able to write to the board of the program to go back to college. I went back to college and studied everything social service under the belt. But let's talk about the foster family. He was in that care for that month. That was the worst experience, you guys, ever in history. The foster mom, I called, she'll hang up on me. She would say, don't call my house anymore. She said, how did you get my number? The day that I got my son back, she came to the house. She said, I really wanted this boy. This was my first son. That's when I found out about the 0 to 3, how important that is, how easy it is to adopt, how easy it is to go in concurrent planning homes, and how easy it is for parents to lose their rights. And so seeing this caregiver fight as hard as me put fuel under my fire. I was in competition with this caregiver for my son that I birthed. Not one time that I didn't love my son. If they would have asked me in that meeting, Bree, what got you here? Bree, how can we help you? Bree, what is it you need? It would have been a totally different outcome. It would have been a totally different outcome. This is a stepping stone for us. We don't stop loving our children. Fast forward, I did a year in that program. The agency wanted me to do 6 months in transition before going home. I had a fine, handsome, white family maintenance worker who saw things in me I couldn't see in myself, who was there for me, who said, you know, when I say thank you, Ryan Statton, I appreciate you. He'll say, Bree, don't thank me, you're doing the footwork. I needed to hear that. And this was the time when my healing started. I was able to unravel all that pain I was carrying for all these years. And that's when I started shooting. And you couldn't turn back after that. That's where I started soaring. I started doing family leadership. It was this program where you get to, it's like a prep you to become a parent advocate. I didn't have one. I was on my own. And so I took this advantage and ran with it. You know, I was asking the questions. I was going to the county. And then that's when I got involved with A Better Way. A Better Way was contracted with Alameda County Social Service. And so with them, we were able to form this group for lived experience parents. In 2011, they offered me a job. I became the lead parent advocate for the past 8.5 years, but we weren't able to go to court. And so I was pushing it, trying our best here. We need to get parents in court. It's very intimidating. This is where they need us. Long story short, 2018, this agency came out of nowhere, asking me to run their interdisciplinary program in conjunction with our court system. I've been there ever since. I love the work I do. I love challenging those judges, county council, the agency. They need to hear from us. They need to know that, you know what, there's another way. It's not always the way that we do it. And so being on BPAC with these amazing constituents is just so rewarding because it's a movement out there. If they don't hear from us, then who's going to tell them? I appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening. I'll pass it back to you, Jeremiah.
Thank you. I think you guys have pretty much covered the questions we actually had. And I was not going to share my story because it's actually published out there. You can find it. But I basically want to share, and this has been asked in chat, what's something that foster parents should know about working with birth families? And for me, it's about kindness. I mean, that's how it changed for me. Somebody demonstrated empathy that, you know, that they realized that I was not just that angry dad. I was somebody that was scared. I did not know how to be a nurturing parent because I was not nurtured or given the kindness that I needed as a child. So I had no idea what a good, healthy parenting looked like. And their kindness opened a door of opportunity, a way that I could see through my trauma to a better future for me and my family. And that's how I changed it. And just demonstrating that initial kindness, it's very hard sometimes when you're dealing with a parent that is very confrontational, but you have to realize they're coming from a space of pain. It's they may seem very personal and in your face about it, but if you just take a step back and focus and say, hey, what's important here is we need to talk about how much you want to love your child, and I'm here to help you figure that out so you can take care of yourself and your child. And that's they can hear that from you. It can help change things. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Kim. So
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. So don't forget, drop your questions in the chat so that we can get to some of those. And I think that's probably what we should have everyone do, is just talk a little bit about what you guys feel is important for foster parents to understand about birth parent experiences. And, you know, if you had a positive experience with a foster family, maybe share a little bit about what they did that helped support you. So Bree, I'm going to start with you.
I'm sorry, my button gets stuck sometimes.
Yeah.
The question was, say it again, hon.
What were things that foster parents, or what should foster parents do to help support birth families? And was there anything in that experience? Obviously you shared it was not very positive, but you know, what are your thoughts there?
In order to bring closure to what I went through, every year in Alameda County, birth parents and foster families get together. We do a retreat every year. It's mandatory. Every graduation, a birth parent is there speaking the do's and don'ts. How can we best support each other? So exchanging that information is so crucial. And it has shifted now because we're able to work together. You know, it took a whole lot of experiences, and I think the one that got me the most is when we went on a retreat and we had to exchange dolls. I was able to keep a doll the whole day, and at the end of the day my son was attached to it, and they said, no, you got to give this baby back. So I felt that empathy and know how you can get attached, but the whole thing is about reunification. The whole point is about reunification. If you're in this line for adoption, I think you're in the wrong field. You know, it's about reunification to the family. So those retreats are so crucial. Exchanging information. We have chats. It's called communication, history, and transition. When the child is removed, a birth parent and the caregiver with a parent advocate facilitates a meeting where you can exchange information. How's my child sleeping? What's the favorite food? Who lives in your home? And they're able to get that, start that right there and in there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Kimberly, Kim, I would love to introduce just more the mental models around what I think foster parents need to know. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Real quickly. Okay. So I just want to highlight that for most parents, especially all my other former dependencies, the foster parents gave off the impression that we have to protect these poor children from these terrible parents, right? But in my last dependency, the foster parent gave me the impression that we need to save this precious mother for her child. Not save the kids from the parent, but save the parent for the child, right? So that's what she gave me the impression of. And so she also mentioned how if she was here to keep my baby safe and loved until my child comes home to me. That's language parents needs to hear from the foster parents saying, hey, we want your kids to go home too, and we're here to support you. I never heard a foster parent tell me that ever, that they're there for me too, right? That was huge. And so because I never heard those words before, it affected me differently. She looked me dead in my eyes, smiled and said this, so I believed her. And she eventually started letting me pick my child up from her home. And she always engaged me in respect, dignity, a lot of loving words and encouragement, right? So the way she engaged me was revolutionary to help me not to worry about my daughter being harmed in foster care. A lot of parents worry about that because kids are harmed. And I didn't have to worry about the foster parent wanting me to fail so that she could adopt my child. In fact, that engagement was one of the concrete things in my dependency that gave me the peace of mind that I needed so I could thrive in college while my daughter was in care and focus on building a foundation of success for me and my daughter. That foster parent, any foster parent can be that foundation to help us thrive and not worry about our child, but focus on ourselves. So, thank you.
That's beautiful. And so my question is, have you stayed in contact with that foster mom?
We present together as well. She's amazing. Yes.
Oh, that's, I'm sorry. You guys are just all giving me chills today with this conversation. So, Shawna, did you want to jump in and share what your thoughts are on what foster parents should be doing to support, and what was your experience with that?
Sure. Yeah. So I think for me, and I think a lot in Indian country, we think of the new child protection system as the new adoption era. The termination rights in Minnesota is one of the highest in all the United States for Native American children. And when I think about my journey with BPAC, one of the things that we have been able to start implementing is the birth parent foster parent partnership. And some of the things that we have been able to talk about, I remember being told, well, we don't know if you want to have you on there because you didn't have a very good experience with your foster family. I remember my boss saying that. I was like, but that's why I need to be on this, right? And not having a good buy-in to the whole thing. But now I'm a Minnesota champion for Quality Parenting Initiative. And that is put on by the Youth Law Center, who actually started the Birth Parent Foster Parent Initiative. And when I think about that, I think about what it would have been like to have certain things that we discussed, such as comfort calls and foster parent support of birth parents from the get-go. In my life, when I was a youth, not as a birth parent, but as a youth. So maybe my mom could have been supported in a way that would have been so awesome to help her heal from her traumas, that I would have never had to be involved in the system at all. That I wouldn't have to spend my Christmases and my holidays alone because I don't have family. I was in so many different foster homes and I did not have the support of people supporting me and my family's birth, my birth family wasn't supported as a youth. So for me, that means a lot. So I think one of the things we talk about, and I was able to testify here in the state of Minnesota about comfort calls, within the first 72 hours, a foster family reaches out to the birth parent and tells them, hey, listen, I'm here to support you. And I know that your baby's going to be returned back to you. And I just want to learn a little bit about your child. Hey, what do they like to eat? What's their bedtime routine? Are they having problems in school in this area? What can I do to best support your child while they're going through this so that you feel good? Like I could pick up where you left off. How do they sleep? What do they like to eat? What are the recipes for those things they like to eat, right? And that way that parent can move forward knowing that their child's going to be cared for and not stolen, right? Because that's huge in the Native American community. I think that relationship between birth parents and foster parents is vital. And I have been saddened when I first started as a parent mentor at the Equal Law Center. I knew that a lot of foster parents were recruiting foster families promising adoption. That should never be the case. Those families should be opted out of being foster families, because the whole point of them is to care for your child to be reunified, not to adopt a child. If you want to adopt a child, then go through an adoption agency. Is that going to be open? Well, let's think how that's going to be. It's not going to be, oh, well, you know what? Your family's gone and now I'm your foster family. Maybe we're talking about opening up our circle. Maybe you're going to be a part of that family just as much as the birth family, because when you terminate a parent's rights, you're not just terminating that parent's rights, you're terminating the brothers and sisters' rights, you're terminating the auntie and uncle's rights, and you're terminating the grandparents' rights. You're terminating everybody that is blood to that child. So if you can keep those lines open and say, hey, listen, maybe this isn't the space for you because our guidelines for reunification are so short, but we're willing to, you know, have this child and have the birth family involved. I think that's such a beautiful thing. And we can just extend that circle of family, which is like, you know, and everything in Native culture is in a circle. So if we can just make that circle a little bit bigger, how beautiful is that, right? So I think families need to keep that in mind. I also think that when you're fostering children, because there's so much red tape for kinship families to be foster parents, that you should actually, and Kimberly, I can talk forever, so please just message me and tell me to stop. I really honestly think that if you're going to foster a Native child or a child of another culture, you need to keep that culture a part of your household. You need to keep that child involved in their ceremonies. Little girls in Native American culture have a berry ceremony when they're coming into puberty. We have naming ceremonies. We have very many different ceremonies for different things. We have dances. We need to keep those things involved so that we do not lose those. So I think there's a whole plethora of different things to keep in mind when you want to become a foster family. And when you become a foster family for a brown or Black child, you really need to keep in consideration their culture and how you're going to uplift it. Not just make sure it's there, but uplift it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I think that's great. You know, and I would agree. After 20 plus years of writing up stories of people, the birth family connection never ends. Kids always come back. They always want to know more about that connection. So it's forever. You know, adoption may be finalized. That doesn't mean anything. So Bree, I have a quick question for you, and Edwin, I'm coming to you next. So Bree, the question was, what did you call the initial call or meeting to begin forming a relationship between the parents and foster parents?
One more time, hon.
What do you call the initial call or meeting to begin forming a relationship between parent or foster parents?
The chat meeting,
Yeah.
chat, communicating history and transition. So the child is removed, the first 24 hours, a chat meeting is to be sent, facilitated and put in by the worker, supposed to be. A lot of time it doesn't happen. So that's when we're seeing our list, we go over our detention list and we say, okay, let's get this out there. Let's notify this caregiver and get time for her to say, hey, when's a good time for you? Because the child's with you. So we're asking them questions. A lot of times they're intimidated by the report or what the worker has said already. And so we make sure they know that in our building, we have security, you know, it's a button you could push if you feel intimidated or you want to stop or anything of the sort, to make sure it's comfortable in the transition between them, the communication arises. And usually it's always here, let's exchange phone numbers, and they continue that without me. And they go on like that. It's so rewarding. And then they'll be like, God, parent is not like how they said they were. And we never are, you know. They put so much trash on oh my gosh. They know only if they ask, how can we help you? How can we make this transition safe? And a lot of times, even today, if I feel that all parents don't want to reunify, right? So if a parent doesn't, and this child already has this relationship, or the parent reunifies and you still need that respite care, go back to that foster family. That child knows them already. If the family's not stepping up, then here, since they have that relationship already, then so be it.
Yeah. Edwin, your thoughts on what foster parents can do to, you know, build that trust and work together with birth families?
For me, my son was in 2 foster homes. The first foster home he was sent to, he was placed there with his brother because my son was removed from mom. Now, my son's brother, his dad is not the same. as mine. So when they removed from mom, they removed my son and then her son by another father. The placement where they were at, they were adopted families. They adopted kids. So my in-home worker, I never had contact with the first foster family, only the dad. The mom never came.
Hope you put yourself on mute, Edwin.
My in-home worker was telling the foster family where my son was first placed at that I'm not going to get, they're recommending me not get custody of my son, so be prepared to adopt him. And that's all they knew about me. But the father of the adoptive family where my son was, he would bring my son to visit and he'd ask me, you know, how you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? But the foster mom never came because she was under the impression that she was going to be able to adopt my son because I wasn't getting my son back home. An instant, something happened to where my son was being whooped with a switch, and his older brother was there and witnessed him being whooped with a switch at this foster family's home because he climbed in the cabinets. I had a wedding and I got my son on that day to do a visit going to a wedding, and I took him to the bathroom to change his diaper, and he had whelps on him from a switch. And I remember these whelps because my mom used to send me out to that tree to get a switch when I was younger, so I know what they look like. To make a long story short, he was moved out of that foster home and placed in another foster home where the foster family didn't know me. I picked my son up from a Casey's gas station for my visit, and then I would bring him back to the Casey's gas station, and then the foster family would be there to get my son. But one night, that foster family called me because my son wouldn't stop crying after a visit we had. And they invited me to their house at like 11 o'clock at night. And my son was sitting in there crying. As soon as he seen us come through the door, he stopped. And he grabbed my hand and we walked over to the piano and he just played on the piano. That foster family today, we still have contact with them. My son was 2 then, my son is 14 now. And that foster family that had my son still makes contact with us. They still call and ask us, do we need a babysitter for Patron, even though he's 14. But I mean, to be able to have that bond after all these years, Christmas cards we get in the mail and we give them back when they're in town, they want to visit, they come and visit. So, I mean, not being told who these parents are when these kids are being placed with foster families, I think is not right. It's not ethical for these people to know, because anytime there's an issue, if these families don't know who the parents are, then how are they going to deal with the issue with my child? So I think that all foster families that take kids just for placement until these parents get their lives together should have a contact moment with these families so we know just exactly what everybody needs. And if there's anything the foster family needs from the parents, they can get. You know, the beautiful thing about having a good foster family is that they take care of your child. And my second foster family was one of the best. They took pictures of my son every day that he was in their house. From whatever he did, he crawled, he made play with a toy, he stacked a block. They took pictures of him and they made sure I got it. So I'm indebted to that foster family for the rest of my life. And they're just like family to me now. So, I mean, we just got to have that communication piece. Foster families have a right to their privacy. But if you care for my child, like you say you do, and you want my child to come back home to me, like you say you do, then we need to have some type of communication. That way we're on the same page at all times.
Awesome. Yep, I totally agree. I know we're running short on time. We have a couple of questions. What advice do you have on how to support children in their relationship with their birth families when reunification is not possible and the goal is changed to adoption? So maybe some of those who have had their parental rights terminated and those kids were adopted out. Kim, go for it.
Okay, so based on from my children, this is from my children that I found. Oh, I didn't gotta tell you guys. So after serving for 2.5 years in Pierce County, helping all these kids come home safely, I found 7 of my children from the age of 3 to 17, total God miracle, right? And I found the last 2 in the last 6 years, my other 2. So I found all my kids, and this is what they all say. Please do not, they said, you did not do me any favors by separating me from my biological families. All my kids, some had terrible adoptive homes, some had really good ones, but their unified voice is, I need to see my biological family, my cousins, my mom, my dad, my uncle. That traumatized my children. And now that I found them and I fly them in to see each other and to each other's states, I'm able to afford that, fly them all over the country to see each other. They are so upset about they didn't even get to see each other. They don't even, the kids see each other. So foster parents, please, if the kids return to you, make sure they connect with their siblings safely or any safe relatives, even their parents, because I changed and my kids were being harmed for like 8 years after I changed. If I'd been able to contact them, I could have saved those children by being a voice for them who were horribly abused in one adoptive home, right? So that's my thing. If the kids can't go home, please keep the biological families accessible to these babies. They need it like air.
Awesome.
And I just want to say, I have a great nephew who's 3 years old that was placed with me last August, and he was in a foster home. Right now, today, they adopted my nephew's older brother, but the courts placed my nephew, my brother's son, with me. And right now, today, we still have contact. They will call me and ask me, can they get my nephew for the weekend? And we make that arrangement. I'm getting ready to adopt my nephew in 3 weeks. So this would be 10 kids in my home because I got a daughter pregnant with twins. So this would be 10 of us. But I mean, just to have that extra support from that foster family. There's some good foster families out there. Don't get me wrong. And you guys are a blessing and heaven sent to some families. Just know that. But always remember that these are not our kids. And we need to take care of them and keep them safe until they're able to return home. And if they're not able to return home, then we need to still figure out how to keep that contact with siblings. That's big.
Yep, that's huge. Sibling
I
connection.
agree. I 100% agree. And I would just like to piggyback off of what Kimberly and Edwin were saying is when you keep those connections with brothers and sisters, for Native Americans, the system believes in a colonized version of family. And in my family, my cousins are my sisters and brothers. My aunties and uncles are my grandparents and my grandparents to my children. But when you keep those blood ties involved, they can keep those connections to their ceremonies, to their culture, and to what is really relevant for me. That's what helped me heal. Our traditional medicines, talking with my family, learning about my history or them learning about their history, being able to attend powwows, being able to attend ceremonies, being able to visit with brothers and sisters. And that might not just be, a colonized version of a brother and sister. That might be your cousins, because that's what it is in my culture. So being able to keep those ties open, like Kimberly says, is so important, and it keeps the children having a sense of belonging.
For sure. One last question. So a lot of you have shared about your drug abuse addiction issues. The question from one of our viewers is that, what happens when the parent just cannot let go of that addiction? And, how do you as a foster parent continue to bridge that gap when they're still so deep in addiction?
My suggestion is to keep offering them hope, saying, I know you can do this. Offer them, recommend where they can go over and over again. But until a parent admits I have a problem, you can lead a horse to water. You can even drown a horse in water, I found out, but you can't make them drink. right? But also just make sure that you stay available for that parent. If they change in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, make sure you keep that connection open. So when that parent is able, you can be the catalyst for helping that child mend that piece in their heart that only their biological family can fill.
For sure.
I'm not sure how long each state has for a case to be open before they terminated parental rights. But I can tell you in Minnesota, it's about a year, 2 years. Didn't take me a year or 2 years to be addicted and lose my kids. Took me a long time to get to that space, but I only have that much to fix my own trauma and heal my own intergenerational and historical traumas. That's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Healing is forever and healing is messy. And that for a foster family to be open to keeping that line of communication open in the future, at any time, and just to be able to work with a birth family is important.
Thank you. I really appreciate all of your time today. You can always read more in Jeremiah's column in Fostering Families Today. Please reach out at any time. You can find us online at fosteringfamiliestoday.com. And I just really appreciate all of our panelists today for sharing their stories and giving guidance to foster, adoptive, and kinship families who, you know, are in this to help kids. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.